Ο κύριος Wyatt είναι καθηγητής Πανεπιστημίου του Εδιμβούργου, είναι ονοράρι, είναι τιμητικός καθηγητής και προφέσορ εμέριτους στο Πανεπιστήμιο, όπως σας είπα, του Εδιμβούργου. Το θέμα που θα αναπτύξει είναι η χρήση της γνώσης στην εξέλιξη και την προσφορά των θρησκειών ανά τους αιώνες.
Ο μιλητής μας που έχει ήδη πάρει θέση στο βήμα είναι ο καθηγητής κ. Wyatt. Είναι... θα το πω και στα αγγλικά. Είναι ομότιμος καθηγητής στις θρησκευτικές σπουδές του Πανεπιστήμιου του Εδιμβούργου και θα μας μιλήσει πάνω στη χρήση της γνώσης στην εξέλιξη και την προσφορά των θρησκειών ανά τους αιώνες. So, our next speaker answers to the name of Nicholas Wyatt, is a Professor Emeritus in Religious Studies of the University of Edinburgh. He had also served as a lecturer and reader, also in Religious Studies in the University of Glasgow, where I was pleased to meet him. We're long-standing friends, and he's really a very authoritative person and a very learned in this field of religious studies. His articles have been published in major journals the world over. And the topic he's going to address is the use of knowledge in the evolution and offer of religions through the centuries. Professor Wyatt, please.
Thank you for the honor of inviting me to this Congress. I'll try to do it justice. In his role as Reg in Monty Python's Life of Brian, John Cleese famously asked, what have the Romans ever done for us? The same may be said of religion. Religion is not an unqualified force for good in society, but nor is it to be dismissed as superstition and nonsense, a relic of the past. For better or worse, it is integral to our very constitution as human beings. In the recent past, the rise of modern academic thinking has enabled us to reach a better understanding of religion. And while secularism has become the dominant culture throughout the industrialized world, religion itself plays a vital part in the life of all human societies, even those where it is openly challenged. In many parts of the world, its truth claims are not questioned. Religion, having played a crucial role in the overall development of human consciousness from the earliest times, tends to provide and embody the basis for moral values, tempering the more destructive tendencies of societies. And it is this integrative role which I am surveying here. I should perhaps begin by attempting a definition of religion. To be valid, a definition must be universal. The safest definition will therefore say the least. We seek a fairly narrow, minimal definition. Here we go. Religion is a useful term for the collectivity of the following aspects of a society. 1. An overall cosmology, invariably a non-scientific one because it's pre-scientific. 2. Very commonly, but not invariably, a belief in supernatural beings, singular or plural, who are usually perceived as having personality. 3. Ritual forms to express and reinforce the tradition, resolve social tensions by rites of purification, and mark the transition points of individual lives, rites of passage. And fourthly, narratives, oral or written, embodying the values, prescriptions, and traditions of the believing community. Religion is of great interest as a topic in all the social sciences, which recognize its central importance for the study of our species, and study it from an etic, that is, objective perspective. They view it neutrally. On the other hand, theology, the discipline normally pursued by those within a tradition, is widely studied from an emic, that is, involved and subjective perspective. Emic and etic are anthropological jargon for the insider and outsider views of religion. My concern here is primarily the etic perspective, but many scholars of religion are motivated in part by an emic element, in addition to their natural fascination with the discipline, and I count myself among them. Striking the balance is the trick. Religion cannot be explained simply in a functional sense as the cement of society, nor is it adequately defined in the Marxist view as an anesthetic against the pains and misery of life, the opium of the people. Theologians will generally give very different accounts from anthropologists, and in case there is a temptation to settle for an uncomplicated sentimental account, it would be quite unwarranted to claim for it as a matter of right the high moral ground in any society, because some of the worst excesses of human cruelty and savagery have been carried out and are still being carried out in its name. We have probably agreed that a working definition as offered above is important to enable us to examine it in a civilized manner, observing the phenomenologist virtue of epoche. We have to begin with an account having a universal basis on which foundation cultures could build their particular superstructures, which reflect their own historical experience. The one thing any comprehensive perspective of the diversity of religions teaches us is that they are all, without exception, historically conditioned and reflect the particular experiences of their adherents. The archaeologist and anthropologist David Lewis Williams, who specialized in the religion of the San of Namibia, wrote of the concept of a tiered universe, heaven above, hell below, and the level of anxious humanity in between appear in one form or other across the globe. The three-tiered cosmos referred to here was more or less universally believed in antiquity and still forms the basis of religious rhetoric in many traditions. It's the biblical view, for start. Lewis Williams' anxious humanity sought ways to escape this prison house, an emancipation which was believed to be achieved by ritual specialists. The hint in his description of people at the mercy of forces beyond themselves is the basis of Rudolf Otto's famous account in The Idea of the Holy, which attempted to analyze what he called the irrational factor in religion. The fundamental element, according to his approach, is the human sense of creatureliness, of utter dependence on a greater external power, experienced in Otto's terms as the numinous. This archaic pattern was also found among the early kingship systems of the ancient Near East, which is my own particular research area, forming the basis for political power, the king having a monopolistic channel to the gods. In the Levant, it characterized the ritual life of kings in the small kingdoms, such as Israel and Judah. A similar pattern obtained elsewhere. An important point about the experiences underlying these religious patterns of thought is that they are sui generis, deriving directly from human neurological structures, and their use as adaptative tools in religious and social contexts was essentially secondary, but their dynamics suited them perfectly for this secondary role. Structured religion in the service of the incipient state from the Neolithic period, about 12,000 years ago onwards, served as the metaphysics of the community, incidentally enhancing the power of kings and priesthoods. Much of this happened at a relatively unconscious level. So we may ask, how did all this come about? How did religion become the dominant feature of all ancient cultures? The idea of engagement with the world as a constraint on human freedom was well stated by the sociologist Peter Berger, who wrote in 1973, "Man manufactures a tool. Once produced, the tool has a being of its own that cannot be readily changed by those who employ it. Indeed, the tool may even force the logic of its own upon its users. The same objectivity characterizes the non-material elements of culture as well. Man invents a language, and then finds that both its speaking and his thinking are dominated by its grammar. Man produces values and discovers that he feels guilt when he contravenes them. Man concocts institutions which come to confront him as powerfully controlling and even menacing constellations of the ancient world." The principle encapsulated here may be said to control everything we have to say about religion, and indeed all cultural forms. The moral ambiguity noted above is the price to be paid for having it. Religion, like language, calls the shots so long as there is a compliant community. Let me turn now to some of the structural forms of religion, particularly the ones, of course, that interest me. Firstly, placement. feet on the ground, orientation. From its earliest beginnings, an important function of religion has been to place a community and its members firmly on earth within a territory. These are the beginnings of GPS, but many thousands of years ago. Orientation is a basic element in the maintenance of this imperative. It is a linguistic example of Berger's point, that language, verbalizing the experience, in turn, comes to control the experience. The clearest example of the presentation is Hebrew, although what I'm about to describe is true of all the Semitic or Afro-Asiatic languages, and as far as I know, I've checked with many, all the Indo-European languages and Japanese as well, so it looks as though it may be universal. I'll give you then a column of terms and then various senses. Firstly, the word kedem, Q-E-D-E-M.
Στην εργασία του De Revolutionibus Orbius Colestium.
Application of the term to the subject.
Μία κρίση προέκυψε το 1859 με τη δημοσίευση του βιβλίου του Δαρβίνου, η καταγωγή των ειδών.
Kedem means the east in Hebrew.
Αλλά με εξαιρέσεις σε ορισμένες από τις υποδιαιρέσεις.
Because you're looking into the east, and you'll see in a moment that the west is behind you unseen, it comes to mean the past.
Ο χριστιανισμός έχει προσαρμοστεί σχετικά καλά στη νέα παγκόσμια νέα τάξη. Επιστήμη και θρησκεία βρίσκονται σε διάλογα σε πολλά πανεπιστήμια στον αγγλοσαξονικό κόσμο, αν και η άνοδος της ψευδοεπιστήμης με τη μορφή του κριεσιονισμού ή του ευφυούς σχεδιασμού είναι ένα ανησυχητικό γνώρισμα σε ορισμένα ιδρύματα της Βόρειας Αμερικής.
We see here an extension outward from the subject into a spatial dimension, the world I experience, and then into a temporal one, my movement through time. Thus I, the subject, am at the center of a world of space and time which I construct from my personal experience and which in turn contains and constrains me. We are all doing this, and the common terminology enables us to coordinate our efforts so that the experience is both personal and communal. This may not appear to be specifically religious, but this intuition is confirmed by its application to, for example, religious architecture. Many religious buildings round the world are essentially extensions of the body, imposed upon the earth, and thus symbolically taking possession of the earth and sanctifying it. The basis of this orientational language, deeply embedded in various language families, as I've noted, is an archaic, even pre-human practice of facing the rising sun in the morning. The feature of this process, which I want to emphasize here, is the implication facing into the past. It means that events in the past are visible, if only in the mind's eye, and can be reflected on, and most importantly, used as a basis for making decisions about the future, which lies hidden behind the subject. Seeing and knowing, sharing the same root in the Indo-European languages, Sanskrit vid, Greek oida, Latin video. We see and understand, constructing our future and our meanings from our past. The literature of the ancient world was originally transmitted orally, preserving the wisdom of the past for use by later generations. The most valuable parts came gradually to be regarded as not just sacred, but as sacrosanct, canonical, and formed the scriptures of various religious groups. So the authoritative record of the past was available for continued scrutiny by subsequent generations.
όπου η θρησκεία δεν έπαιξε σημαντικό ρόλο.
There is a broad consensus that myth is a narrative literary genre, distinct, say, from epic, saga, or history. However, the term is commonly used to cover such a wide variety of literary forms that I prefer to see it as a mindset. While it is narrative, I think of it as the entire emic mode of thinking, that is, the narrative about one's experience within the community, when expressed in narrative form. To live within a religious system that is emically is to inhabit the world of myth, which is not to be contrasted with truth. While anthropologists and sociologists of religion delight in myth as a rich source of material for analysis, many biblical scholars have had a problem with it. By defining myths as stories about gods, plural, Otto Eisfeld considered it entirely proper to deny that biblical literature ever used myth, on the basis that the Old Testament is monotheistic. The tendency among many biblical scholars was to gloss overtly mythical material in the Old Testament, such as the creation and flood stories, as demythologized. Move on to memory and ritual. The human faculty, which is crucial in order to benefit from the cultural and religious values of ritual and narrative, is memory. If memory goes, our entire personality dissolves. Memory of the community narrative is what makes us social beings. Merlin Donald traced its pre-human antecedents, noting, however, that humans alone are aware of the passage of time and through memory can live in the past, recalling earlier events. Indeed, events before our own lifetime we can remember collectively, socially, prosthetically, as some sociologists have called it, by locking into the narrative of the community. A lovely example of this is the Jewish Passover rite, when the son asks his father in the book of Exodus, "What does this rite mean?" And his father replies, "It is the sacrifice of Yahweh's Passover, when he passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt to smite the Egyptians and rescue our families." That is still recited today with children who have no immediate direct knowledge, of course, of that ancient past. Theism. Ritual and myth are independent of the existence of gods. Religion does not require gods, and yet the overwhelming majority of religions throughout history have been theistic. So when did ideas of God first develop? Perhaps a good starting point is Stuart Guthnie's book, Faces in the Clouds. Citing Xenophanes and his horses, he proposed that the principle of anthropomorphism had important explanatory value, relating to the structuring of the human mind. It was a survival strategy to attribute anthropic qualities to hostile environmental and meteorological factors, wild animals, numerous places, and so forth. This made them amenable to engagement in dialogue and negotiation. Julian Jaynes used the Iliad and the Odyssey as illustrative of two successive stages in the development of human consciousness. The former, more archaic, being, strictly in his view, unconscious and bicameral, in which the neural processes of the right hemisphere of the brain functioned as messengers and those of the left as hearers, so that the human subject heard voices giving him or her instructions, rather like a modern schizophrenic, and reacted automatically and unthinkingly. These voices, comparable to the external numinous of Otto's analysis, were those of the gods, who were, Jaynes claimed, organizations of the central nervous system. This remains a brilliant insight into the neuropsychological basis of religion. James's theory has powerful explanatory force. Come finally to truth. Let us turn to the matter of truth. This is a citation from a book I wrote called Myths of Power, published 20 years ago. If we ask, is this or that religion true, the honest response is surely that any religion is true to its participants, because religion is the totality in any given cultural context of those symbolic constructions of the mind and actions which validate life and permit a more or less adequate response to the prevailing environmental, political, and existential world. But to extrapolate truth in a cognitive sense from such a network of symbols so as to falsify a rival set of constructions seems to me an absurd exercise. The Greek word for truth, I'll probably mispronounce it, aletheia. To see what this means, recall that according to ancient Greek tradition, when you die, you cross the river Styx. You then drank the waters of Lethe, I suppose, modern Greek, and forgot all your troubles. Lethe, forgetting, aletheia, not forgetting, remembering. For the ancient Greeks, truth was remembering, memory. And it is true both for individuals and for nations that memory of the personal or national past is essential to the maintenance of identity. Much of our national memory may be fanciful, mythical in the dismissive sense, unless we search well below the surface. And where myth and history must conflict is where new historical insights correct mythic misperceptions. In the United Kingdom, about to leave Europe and betray the world yet again, we have a national myth about the benign nature of the British Empire. Uncomfortable truths are now emerging as to how brutal it often was, all over the world. We can go round the world and find that every nation has skeletons in the cupboard. At times, the function of myth seems to be to keep them there. For as T.S. Eliot remarked in his poem Burnt Norton, humankind cannot bear very much reality. The function of history, as it is now developed, is to open the cupboard doors. A function of religion should be to give us the courage to do so and to face the consequences. Thank you.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ τον κύριο Wyatt για την ομιλία του. Ο κύριος Βογιανός Ρόι θα θέσει μια ερώτηση στον κύριο Wyatt.
Listen to what you accounted so eloquently, Professor. Intrigued me into asking you a question. Obviously, there is a strong interface between religion and a historical process in every country. Not only in the sense that one triggers off the other somehow or impacts upon it, but also to the sense of shaping up developments and even sometimes consciences. So I'd just like to ask you, what do you think goes a longer way towards influencing each other? Mundane development things upon religion? Or do you think religion has a stronger impact on mundane things? What do you think about that?
From the very beginning of human consciousness, it is a two-way process. Neither is derivative. Our very humanization is a religious process as well as a cultural process.
So they are more or less balanced in this respect. I mean, the interface, the impact of each other on one on the other is more or less balanced.
Your
Yes.
voice is too loud.
Sorry, I'm saying that I understand that you see this impact as a balanced process between socialization, social evolution, and religious evolution. One impacts the other more or less to the same extent.
I would also perhaps say, in the light of modern perceptions of religion, and thinking, for example, of jihadists at work,
Yes.
that if there's an imbalance, you can see the results. The imbalance in the Middle Ages was the Crusades,
Yes.
which need no justification. I mean, the cruelty beyond measure, now being visited by the victims of that period.
Right. Yes, I think that answers my question. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.